And now we'll have a word from our sponsor, the Contra Costa Water District. The Contra Costa Water District's Lawn to Garden rebate program provides rebates to qualified customers in Central and East Contra Costa County to replace their existing water-thirsty front lawns with native or other water-wise landscaping. The rebate is $1 per square foot, up to $1,000 for a single family residence, and up to $20,000 for commercial, homeowner associations, industrial, and institutional properties. The district also offers a fabulous landscape design assistance program to its customers. In this program, customers can receive a free 2-hour consultation from a professional landscape designer to help you explore ideas and make recommendations on the layout, plants, and other features that may work for your front yard. Visit ccwater.com to find out more. And I don't want to forget to say that Kelly Marshall, who designed the next garden you'll be seeing, is part of that landscape design assistance program. So I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and say farewell to my longtime colleague and friend, Chris Dundon. Chris is the water use efficiency supervisor at the Contra Costa Water District, and he is retiring next month. Chris really walks the talk. Quite a few years ago, he sheet mulched his lawn and planted a native plant garden. And here he is on the Bringing Back the Natives Garden Tour, answering questions as a garden tour host. This is Chris's front garden. Chris and I have worked together for about 30 years. Chris's passion and commitment to his work made him emblematic of the best of our public servants. Many years ago, Chris told me, I want to feel when my career is over that I have made a difference. And I know that he has. I will miss Chris's willingness to think out of the box, his warm and friendly manner, and his approachableness. I will miss his expertise, sense of humor, encouragement, and the confidence he had in me and my work. The programs at the Contra Costa Water District that Chris has developed include this lawn rebate program and the landscape design assistance program. They have saved over 20 billion gallons of water and served as models for similar programs throughout the state. I want to wish Chris well in his retirement and to close by saying that I will miss him dearly. We'll go now to Dan and Lisa Wanket's garden in Concord. And this is the before photo of the Wanket's garden, a large corner lot. And here is an after photo. This was done shortly after, well, maybe a year or two, I guess, after it was replanted. And they have a stream in their front yard. And also, I understand now, one in the back as well. And here's another photo of the front garden. And this garden has been great for attracting wildlife. Here's a lupin with a native bee. Whoops. And so we'll go now to Dan, and looks like Kelly is there too in Concord. Hello.
Hello.
Good morning.
So let's see. So Kelly, you are part of the district's landscape design assistance program. Can you just give a quick summary of how that works?
You get 2 hours with a designer. There are maybe a dozen or 14 of us on the list that are familiar with the program and the requirements of the program. Will come out. I think we all do that 2-hour thing a little differently. Generally, we ask a lot of questions up front, and then some of us do some sketching right on site. Some of us just create plant lists, that sort of thing. So at the end of that 2 hours, you pay the designer $150, and then when you complete your rebate project, you get that $150 back from Contra Costa Water in addition to the $1 per square foot. So I think a lot of times people hold on the lawn because they don't know what else to do. And so hopefully spending a couple hours with the designer gives you an idea of the possibilities.
Okay. All right. So Dan, Shall we just launch right into your video and we'll have some questions afterward?
Hi, this is Kelly Marshall, and I am here with my client, Dan Wanket, and we are in Concord today at the Wanket Garden. Dan, say hello.
Hello.
All right, we're going to walk through and show you the Wanket Garden. Dan, do you want to give us a little history of the garden and what was here before?
Sure, and thank you, and thanks for taking interest in my garden here in Concord. Well, I guess I just try and make it real brief. I mean, I bought the house about 17 years ago, and what you see here in front looked quite different. We had up at the top of the steps, top of the path here was a very large, about a 3-foot diameter eucalyptus tree. Dead set in the middle of this yard was a big date palm. Up sort of the upper slope here was filled with juniper and a couple of pine trees, and then everything else was a whole lot of white rock. That was sort of what I started with when we bought the house, and I really wasn't in love with the landscaping, but I really didn't know what I want. So frankly, I spent 10 years slowly removing and clear cutting and figuring out what I want to do with the yard. So what you see here, everything was planted as part of Kelly's plan 5 years ago. We built this in 2016. The only plant remaining before I bought the house was the redwood tree right over here, and 17 years ago it was about 5 foot tall. So just to give a little more background to how I started, with the garden you see here now. About 6 years ago, I was looking at this blank slate of a yard, wondering, now what do I do? And my original plan was a lawn with maybe a little planter areas. We were in the middle of a drought, and it just didn't seem to make sense to me. And so I had my buddy Chris Dundon with Contra Costa Water District over, and we were sipping a beer, and I said, Chris, what do I do? And he said, call Kelly Marshall, and that's what led me to the garden I've got here now.
Okay. And what drew you to having a native garden? And let's walk through and maybe look at some of these plants as we do. Down here in front, we've got sulfur buckwheat, and right behind it blooming are a couple of our foothill penstemons. So Dan, tell us why you chose natives.
Sure. Well, I was really looking for, in general, a fairly natural, woody, meadowy type of garden that was user-friendly, I would say, and also that would be attractive to wildlife. I had an interest in native plants. I wasn't necessarily focused on native plants, but certainly as I started talking to Kelly about what it is we wanted to plant here, it just pulled me more and more to make sense to go heavy on the natives, both in it being adaptable to the climate as well as more attractive to the native wildlife that we have around here: birds, amphibians, reptiles, and mammals.
And tell us what kinds of wildlife you've seen in this garden.
Sure, it's been interesting. In terms of mammals, I've got coyotes, fox, quite often skunks, raccoons, squirrels, obviously. A lot of alligator lizards, western fence lizards. No rattlesnakes yet, but we've got just the other day back in the corner over here a nice size gopher snake, and a lot of birds. We've got a lot of songbirds. Cedar waxwings like to come down to the water. I've seen hawks out here. A sharp-shinned hawk used to like to sit on the rock right here and take a little bath and probably look for something to eat. A lot of different songbirds come through here, and the insects. What surprised me the most was how much I've enjoyed the insects that have come through. The butterflies, a lot of bumblebees, and interestingly, had never seen it before, a hummingbird moth. Started seeing them a couple of years ago, and we see them in the garden occasionally.
Tell me, wait, don't forget to tell us about your motion detector camera.
Oh, and back on the post over here, I have a trail camera that we use to capture the wildlife, particularly in the evening, that like to visit the stream and the pond here. And it's interesting. Every couple of months, I pull the film out of there and take a look at what's been visiting the garden. That's where I see the foxes, and I see coyotes and turkeys, and the neighborhood cat certainly likes to come through here also.
That's very cool.
The other thing, I guess I'll say one of the things that was one of the more enjoyable parts of the garden was working with Kelly on what was what we were looking for, what was the criteria for the garden. And certainly we wanted a woodsy theme. I wanted a garden that transitioned seasonally, and I think we've captured that here. And the wildlife friendly aspect of it was really important for us. A critical criteria that I gave Kelly was my intention to bring timber wolves back into Contra Costa County. And I'd like to say that when we started building the garden, there were no timber wolves in California. There's now 2 wolf packs, I believe, and just recently one came as close to about 50 miles from the Bay Area. So I think I've been successful.
Excellent. Tell me, what are some of your favorite plants in the garden?
I gotta say, this is like saying what's your favorite child. But first off, I just like the meld of plants. When Kelly briefed me on that question, I had to think about it a little bit. I like the way everything intermixes. So there is just a real strong appreciation. If I were to pick out a couple of them, I absolutely love the manzanita. I've always enjoyed manzanita, but seeing it in the garden, we've got several different, I think I've got 5 in here right now. It's just a beautiful year around. The blossoms, the structure, the color. It really, I think, really provides a foundation for the garden. I love the woolly blue curl. Had never even heard of a woolly blue curl before Kelly proposed it from our garden. The penstemon are really great. And then I guess I appreciate the plants that have really shown an affinity for the garden. You can see a lot of the plants that are really prolific here. Unfortunately, the blue-eyed grass and the flax are sort of getting towards the tail end of their blossoming, but they've been very prolific self-seeding. The grasses I've got here have been, over the last couple of years, they were slow to develop, but they've really started to fill in the meadow. And really interestingly, we didn't plant any lupine, but the first year our garden was planted, 2 volunteer lupines showed up, and over the years I'd get a few per year, and we just had a bumper crop, over 100 lupine. They're all spent now, but I had over 100 lupine blossoming, mostly up in the corner that Kelly's pointing to right now. So those are sort of some of my favorites, but I like all my kids.
So besides the lupin showing up in such mass amounts, what are some surprises that have surprised you as this garden has grown and developed?
I guess, like I said, the plants that have really shown an affinity, like I said, the blue-eyed grass, the lupin, the flax, but some of the plants that haven't liked my garden so much have been a little bit. That's sort of a surprise. I don't take it too personal, but I really like the buckwheat. Certainly the sulfur buckwheat out front has done great, but we struggled a bit with some of the other buckwheats. And I guess one of my lessons was, every garden is sort of unique, and the plants are unique, and some work well and some don't. The other thing I'd say that I was pleasantly surprised is the durability of the garden. I think we've got a pretty dense planting, but it really shows well even when grandkids and dogs go trouncing through the woods, as my grandkids like to say.
Tell us a little bit about how the garden gets watered. That's always a question we get in person on the tour. What do you want to tell us?
Yeah, I guess I'll say I haven't solved that. We went with sort of I guess I'd call it the standard or the traditional drip irrigation system when we installed the garden. In hindsight, I would have done it a little bit differently. With the point system irrigation, I think I don't get a good distribution of water throughout the garden. Mm-hmm. Something like a Netafim probably would have worked a little bit better. We struggled a bit with differing needs of the garden. The fact we had some distance spaced plants as well as the meadowy close distance plants. So right now I'm in a bit of a transition mode, frankly, on how I want to water it going forward, and that's something that I'm talking to Kelly and others about, how we transition it to a longer term sustainable garden.
Okay, and tell us about the maintenance that's involved.
Oh, good question. Yeah, that was another criteria that Kelly asked when we were planning the garden is, do I like to come out in the garden and noodle? So do we want to build something that requires, a a lot of gardening out there, and I told her, frankly, not. I like building, but I don't like the maintenance side of things as much. And so, you know, I likened it to, you know, if I had a lawn here, I'd have to come out here and mow half an hour every week. And so I don't want to do any more than that. And really what I have now is I don't do a lot, but occasionally we'll come out and we'll spend a few hours pruning and trimming, weeding, although, you know, with the mulch and the denser plants, the weeding is a little less every year. And so I probably spend, you know, a few hours, 4 or 5 times a year weeding around the garden. Occasionally we'll come out and we'll do a little heavier pruning, but I would call it a relatively light maintenance garden right now that I have.
Okay, all right. Shall we walk up and show Stonehenge, and then I think there might be something in the back that you want to show us?
Yes. So my wife is a fan of a book called Outlander, and in Outlander there is standing stones, and here we've got a little standing stone garden outside our kitchen here. This part of the yard definitely picks up a lot through the summer. The grasses and the fuchsia and the lantana really start picking up this time of year. So this tends to look very, very lush, from this time through the summer into fall. And it looks a little haggard during the winter, but it's starting to pick up some.
All right. Well, winter's not. It's okay to be a little quieter in the winter, right? The manzanitas give us a big show in the winter.
Absolutely.
Okay. And is there anything that you might want to show us in the back?
Well, we've got a little sneak preview for perhaps garden tours of the future. We've gone to a next phase of work, which is landscaping the backyard here. This was something that
Yay!
when I bought the house, we'd be standing in the middle of English ivy with a lot of white rocks and a couple of pine trees and a big carob tree. And you can see now we've created another, I call it the lower stream, with more plantings, and we're really looking forward to relaxing in our backyard to this garden that's coming through here.
No camping reservations required.
Not at all, and I get to hear a stream all night long from my bedroom.
That's so fantastic. And as you can see, this garden is just finishing up being installed. We don't even have the bark down yet. We just got the last of the plants in today. And this is the lower stream, which hopefully we will all get to see next year in person. All right. Anything else you want to tell us about the garden, Dan?
No, but if there's any questions, I think Kelly and I will be here to field your questions after you watch the video. So again, really appreciate you spending a little time with our garden.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining us in Concord.
All right, well, that was terrific. Thank you so much, you guys. You could go into video making if you choose to change careers in the future.
Infomercials.
We're starting to market ourselves in infomercial land.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had a few questions here. So Dan, can you tell us about your pond and bog plants?
About the plants?
Your pond and bog plants.
So we've got in the bog, actually, I don't know if you can see it behind me. The one in the front, I have monkey flower. I forget which kind of.
Seep monkey flower. SEEP.
And I think we put one small plant in. There may have been a pruning from yours, Kelly.
Yeah.
And I would call it very prolific. I love it, but it takes a lot. I mean, it starts to take over, and after it's done blossoming, I tend to prune it back pretty heavy and keep it in the areas that I want to, and it sort of rotates through the garden pretty nicely. And I forget the other plant is in a bucket, that grassy one.
I think that's a chorus, sweet flag. That's a non-native. I think the installer put that in.
And that the intention of that was to cover the platform where the pump, the recirculating pump sits.
I have a few aquatic plants in my pond. I have scirpus, which is a bulrush. That's a tall one. And the aquatic monkey flower that Dan also has, the yellow flowering one. And I have a very nice one called Burr Marigold, Biden's lavis, that blooms in the fall. That's beautiful. We had some questions about water use in your pond. Have you found your pond to be much of a water user? It's recirculating, right, Dan?
Right. Right. No, I mean, the main water use that I've had is, we've got a lot of curves in the pond, so the water wants to escape. And so it's taken a bit of work, to plug leaks, where the water wants to get around the liner. So, once we got that set, I have it coming on. I top it off about 5 gallons every day. There's an automatic filler, and it overfills it a tad. So I would say I don't use much water. It's a little bit shadier on this in the front here, so there's not a lot of evaporation. The one in the back that we just built, that we showed at the end of the video, gets a little more sun, and I'm pretty confident it's not leaking. And there, I would say it probably through evaporation loses maybe 10 gallons a day, and I have that topping off every other day right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a lot, but there is some, particularly through evaporation.
Well, and wildlife need water. Like, we have very effectively eliminated, many, many, many water sources for wildlife. And Nancy Winninger from the Audubon Society said, one of the most important things we can do for wildlife is provide water in our gardens, a source of clean water. I know we have a pond in our yard, and I feel like we can serve in our house. And so I'm happy to provide water for wildlife in our backyard.
Yeah, and I'm still anticipating the first steelhead migration, but I'm patient.
Congratulations on the wolves.
We're getting closer.
You are indeed. So I know you saw a gray fox on your trail cam, right?
Yes.
That's exciting. I'm envious.
Yeah. It is pretty interesting. Every couple of months I pull the trail cam out and take a look at what's been navigating through the garden during the day and night.
Someone asked if you've had like too much wildlife. Do raccoons dig, or do you have problems with the creatures that visit your garden?
None at all. I sort of one of the things that was important to me in the garden was to attract wildlife, and so I figured, I'm trying to attract wildlife, so I'll deal with the nuisance if it does become a nuisance. I mean, the only time I've really had any damage was really when the seat monkey flower really got overgrown in the bog, and some raccoons had a lot of fun playing in it. And my trail cam picked night after night these raccoons messing around in the bog, and I get up the next morning before I found the pictures on the trail cam, and the monkey flower destroyed in the pond. And I finally figured out it wasn't my grandson, it was a raccoon.
All right, I'm glad to hear that. So I'm curious about pruning. Your manzanitas are beautiful. I haven't seen your garden for a few years, but they've really grown up and they're beautiful. Can you talk about the maintenance of the manzanitas? When do you prune? Do you prune, and when do you prune?
So I've pruned them once in the 5+ years we've been here. I think it was last year. I had a guy come out, and the guy Ron that built the pond out front, and he did a pruning just to give it a little bit more shape. But no, I've really left them alone for the most part.
So someone asked about your favorite grasses. I saw you had a number of different grasses in this garden. Can you talk about what you have?
Oh, favorite kids again. Well, so Kelly, help me here, Kelly.
Okay.
We've got.
We have.
I'm not a plant person. Thank God I've got Kelly, because I would have probably a lawn full of non-native grasses and pampas grass in the front if I was left to design it.
No. We've got California fescue, more located around the bog. Under the, where it's really shady, we've got Calamagrostis foliosa. That's Mendocino reedgrass. That's one of my favorites. It's longer lived in shade, although you can do it in sun out here. You just won't have it as long in the garden. It's really beautiful, no maintenance. And then we've got June grass, and we also have, I think, Bouteloua gracilis mixed out there too, although it's a little later to be showy. So it's up, but it's not doing much yet in terms of a pretty bloom.
And then Muhlenbergia up top.
Yeah, we've got deer grass up above the bog as well. Deer grass.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, the grasses is something just to add on the grasses. I would say it took a few years for them to start figuring out my garden. But over the last couple of years, there's been a lot more natural propagation, and the last few years, it's getting to be a denser and denser look, and the grassy look, meadowy look that I was really looking for in the meadow area is really coming up.
Well, I have to say, I was so envious to hear that you had an unexpected lupin explosion.
Oh, it's been ridiculous. Yeah, I think I mentioned in the video, the year we planted, 2 volunteer lupins showed up in the top. In fact, Kelly noticed that they were growing and she said, "Hey, those are lupin, leave them alone." And because I would have picked them thinking they were weeds. And those 2 grew. The next year, there was a couple of more. Next year, a few more. Last year, I think I had 6. And this year, I had over 100 growing up in the upper corner, but it was prolific. It was spectacular a month ago.
Yeah, it really was.
Oh, that's fantastic. Somebody asked about sources for water plants. So I want to say that if you go to the Garden Tours website and look under Find a Nursery, you'll find about 10 or so different native plant nurseries, most of them here in the East Bay, but some a little north and south as well, that you could look at for the water plants. You had mentioned how low maintenance your garden is. That's nice to hear.
Yeah, that was, I mean, I think I'm an engineer, so I mentioned the word criteria a lot in the video. But that was a big part of the initial conversations that Kelly and I had on, her really quizzing me and finding out what we want in our garden. And one of the, I thought it was an important question is, do you like going out in your garden on a regular basis and noodling around with it? And I said, well, not really. And so a lot of the design around the garden was such that I can leave it alone for a long period of time and it looks really good, but it also affords the opportunity to play in it when we want to. So, I mean, and I think I said in the video, I didn't want to spend any more time than I would if it was a big lawn and I had to mow it a half an hour every week. And that's sort of what it is. I don't have to do anything for many weeks at an end. And sometimes I'll come out and spend a few hours and clean things up.
So my own garden, which Kelly helped me with a long time ago, is about 12 years old now. So it's a mature garden and it's now densely planted. And we moved out of our house for 10 months when we were remodeling. And I am just amazed that when we moved back in, the garden looks great. It had no water at all for a year, no weeding, no pruning, no deadheading, no nothing. And you have a little bit of weeds around the edge and, I could go in there and do a little pruning, but new gardens, of course, need tending and maintenance. But now that my garden is established, it was just amazing, I think, how it held up after a full year of having nothing done to it. I can't think of another garden that I would see around my neighborhood that could be left untended for a year and still really look good.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's about time for us to move on. So I want to ask if you might be able to join us on Zoom or YouTube and answer any questions that people might have for you.
Sure.
All right. So Dan, it's nice to see that you had your back garden done. I know I've been hearing about that for a while.
Oh, it's looking good. Looking really good. We're excited.
The front looks great too. I haven't seen your front garden for some years now, maybe 4 or so years, and it looks fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you.
So I want to say that if you're interested in having Kelly do a garden design for you, you can reach her on the tour's website under Find a Designer. She's Kelly Marshall Garden Design, or you can go to the Contra Costa Water District's website, their lawn to rebate program area, if you're in their service area, and you can have Kelly come out and design your garden. So thank you so much, you two.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks
Enjoy
for
the
having
day,
us.
everybody.
Okay.